Hello, lovely beings. JJ Rose here. I wanted to share what I personally saw in late October of 2016. Now, in order to tell this story so that it makes sense, I need to start in 2015. So in 2015, both myself and one of my best friends were very active in paranormal groups, in paranormal investigative groups, as well as I would get calls from, friends and family to do different energetic work at different times myself. Quite active. Paranormal groups were on average getting a call at least once a month, if not once every other month, depending. And like with any association, people who know people. And so I have friends who know people in other paranormal groups. And for the most part, for all of us, it was pretty much the same. We all had kind of like a normal baseline of calls that we were getting. So fast forward to October of 2016, about a week before Halloween. My best friend at the time was moving far away, and I knew I wasn't going to see her for a couple years. So we decided we carved out an entire day to be together and to have ourselves a little tea party. And she was going to come over and we were going to hang out until about like 2 in the morning when she had to go pick somebody up when they got off work. So I made sure that I ate well. I rested super great the night before. I didn't do very much that day because all of my energy I wanted for when she came. And so I could just sit and talk to her and really just kind of soak up those final moments of being able to see her, knowing that I wasn't going to see her for, physically for a while. So she comes over and we're having tea, and mind you, it was caffeinated tea. So we got a little caffeine, a little pep in our step. And all of a sudden around like 10 o'clock, I'm exhausted. And I'm feeling awful inside because I'm so tired that I'm thinking there's no way I'm going to make it till 2 in the morning. I don't know if I can make it another hour. And, but I'm trying, so I'm pumping more tea with caffeine inside me. And all of a sudden around 10:30, I look at her and she's got, the dark circles under the eyes. And she goes, I don't know what's going on. I'm exhausted. I said, well, this is awful because I'm exhausted too. But, again, we're both on the same level that we want to really soak up this time that we have together, knowing we're not going to physically be together in a very long time. And besides being one of my best friends, she's, very spiritual as well and can see the way that I do also. And so we have that we can talk about besides just normal everyday life stuff. So around 11 o'clock, basically we look at each other kind of with the realization that neither of us is going to make it until 2. And, we're either going to pass out and not wake up in time for her to go pick up the person who is getting off of work at 2, or she needed to go now and drop off the car and just see about getting them so they can take themselves home so she could go to bed. So for whatever reason, when I opened the door for her to leave, I walked out before her, which is kind of odd because when you think about it, normally when someone's leaving, you open the door, they walk out, and then you follow them. But I did the reverse for whatever reason. And as I stepped out, I turned towards the street, which the front of my house basically faces a huge field. So there's no houses over there. And I stopped dead in my tracks. And she comes out and immediately freezes right next to me. And basically all we could do was stare ahead, and we grabbed hands, which we're 2 grown women. We don't normally, holding hands isn't really high on our list of things to do. But what we saw was so overwhelming that was literally the only thing we could do. Neither of us could speak. Basically across the street in the field was the only way to call it is legion. It was a legion of dark entities and demons. And there were so many, I couldn't even count how far back they went. I mean, it went miles, and there were over hundreds of thousands. It was so immense, and they were lined up like an attack, very old school war, how everyone basically stood in lines, and they were in battle gear. And so in the front of the house, obviously I have my protection bubble. I see this thing on the right hand side try to get in, and it's this kind of hunched over, just imagine a whole bunch of fabric like over like a small couch, but like in a body kind of moving, that kind of look. And it's trying to get in. And so I kind of blast it out with light. And then on the left side, this huge, probably 12, 13 foot tall, spindly creature with this huge head tries to get in. And they're basically doing like what predators do in the wild with attack formation, where one tries to distract you while the other ones come in and attack from behind. But obviously we're keen to it. So the only thing I can actually get out of my mouth at this point was Care Bear stare now. And both of us basically just start light blasting these creatures that are trying to get in, her in one direction, me in the other, to keep these things from physically trying to invade in my property. And as we're looking at what's in front of us and these things trying to attack and keeping them at bay, we are now, both of us are thinking the same thought, which is, how is she going to get out to her car? A. B, let alone how is she going to drive away safely with all of this around? Like, are we waiting this out? How long are these things going to be there? I mean, this is something we are both physically seeing for ourselves, and we're both thinking about it at the same time. So after about 15-20 minutes, when we get these things to finally back off that are trying to invade my home, we basically tell each other, I'm going to walk you to the car, I'm bubbling you, and I will continue to bubble you and stay on the phone with you while you get to your destination, while I physically stay at my home and keep these things at bay on my own. So we do that. It takes about another 15 to 20 minutes for us to safely get her to her car. And I bubble her car, and she gets on the phone with me while I'm standing outside in the dark by myself, trying to keep these things at bay and keep my house at bay. And while I'm on the phone with her, and I can also see her while she's driving, it wasn't a video call, but in my mind's eye, I'm checking in on her, and these things are literally for miles from my home, jumping and bouncing off of the bubble of her car. I mean, they're really trying to attack her. There were all sorts of things that looked like warped warthogs to Wendigo looking creatures. I mean, there were all sorts of things I've never even seen before, things I've never seen depicted before, have no clue what they are. Was like, wow. I mean, just the immense amount of them was overwhelming. Now, by the grace of God, where she was going was about 7 miles away. And when she hit about 5 or 6 miles from my home, it stopped. And she was able to safely get to her destination. And at that point, basically, she dropped off the car and was like, I'm going to bed. Like, I don't know what is going on. And I told her I'm going to get off the phone, and basically I'm just going to keep my bubble active and pray on this. And, we'll call each other in the morning. So that night, I'm praying on this and obviously keeping my house warded and just trying to think about what in the world we just witnessed and went through, and what does this even mean, for the world at large, let alone why are we seeing it? And what came to me was whatever was coming down the pike was going to be so huge and so drastic that the world would never be the same. And also that this legion had been released and things were going to change in regards to how normally dark entities work with their they kind of have like a routine, right, that they do, and how they normally work with their routine, things were going to change. And what I got specifically was people were now, well, not all, but some, were open vessels, and the entities no longer had to try anymore to get in. Like, people were just going to willingly accept them in. Which, I mean, from the perspective of someone who does what I do, is terrifying. Thinking that people are just going to be allowing in these dark entities and letting them just run them. Well, if you lived in America in November of 2016, I'm pretty sure you're familiar with what ended up happening. And obviously, our country hasn't been the same since. I know it affected the entire world. I can tell you that since that last week of November of 2016, our world has not been the same. It hasn't. Personally, with our paranormal groups, and, mind you, between me and just the few people that I know that are active in different ones, and then the people they know, we know at least 30 different ones. And for about 2 years, no one got any calls on our side of the United States. And so I actually started calling random ones myself, just reaching out, just like, hey, kind of do what you do in a different area. Just curious, are you getting any calls? And they'd be like, it's the weirdest thing. Like, we actually haven't, which is so weird because normally we get like at least 1 or 2, every couple months. So one of my friends did a little research and had some friends in the Midwest and found out that in the Midwest, apparently paranormal activity started really popping off like around 2017, 2018. And I found that interesting. It's like it all went kind of to the heart of the country. Right? Now, unfortunately, neither I nor anyone that I knew of knows people with paranormal investigative groups in other countries. So we were only really talking about in America. But if this resonates with anyone who did any paranormal investigative work in other countries, or if you know anyone, please ask them if they had any calls from late 2016 to about 2018, 2019. Now, obviously in America, our country went through massive changes, and, people were fighting. And there was a ton of hate, fear, depression, repression of others. A lot of people backing the wrong horse, if you ask me. A lot of people possessed. I mean, I actually saw 2 different pastors who were on TV, like kind of TV evangelist pastors that were clearly possessed. I mean, I could see it. And it wasn't just me. I ended up, luckily I have a ton of people who, like me, can see things spiritually. And I had one of them actually email me and be like, can you believe this guy? Like, have you seen him? Like, he's clearly possessed. And I'm sitting there going, I just saw this. And I'm even freaking out. Like, how is anyone buying into what he's saying? He's preaching hate. And he's trying to be a Christian minister. I mean, it was shocking. And pretty much everything that's happened since the end of 2016. I mean, all of us who've been alive during this time period, it feels like one thing after another, right? And then, of course, 2020 happened, and then we've got like apocalypse bingo going on, which, we're in 2022 now, and yeah, it's still going on. And so I asked myself, I mean, even in 2020, I was asking myself, why in 2020 are we dealing with some of the issues that we're dealing with? And here we are in 2022, and I'm asking myself the same thing. Why are we dealing with racism? Why are we dealing with homophobia? Why are we dealing with these ridiculous issues that should be gone? I mean, I don't know if a timeline shifted or if these things just unleashed and, took over and just caused so much mayhem and havoc. but I'm seeing the repercussions on a spiritual as well as a physical scale. And this is also why I feel like so many people are waking up in the past 5 years, is because they've been called to, because whatever was released, there has to be an equal and opposite reaction. And so if you're a light worker, if this makes sense to you, if the timeline makes sense to you, or if you started waking up within this time frame of, 2015, 2016, God bless you, because there's a lot of work to be done. And even if you feel like, oh, maybe I only just talked to one person, then maybe you're helping one person. And if you talk to multiple people, just know that whether you know it or not, you are putting light out there. And every time you smile at a stranger, every time you do something nice, every time you put love and prayer out there for good, you're spreading light. I don't have much else to say other than this is my experience and this is what I saw. And, unfortunately, I haven't really seen it slow down that much, but it was extremely impactful. And like I said, I've seen it physically play out in the world. And I pray on it a lot. And I pray for all of you out there as well. And I'm not saying this story to spread fear. If anything, actually the opposite. I think for some people, this might help put the past couple years in perspective of what changed, because it wasn't just a political change, like something else changed, and it was quick and it was immediate and it was intense. So with that, I leave you all to keep spreading the good news and spreading the light. Thank you.